Welcome to the Healthy Reasonings podcast with Dr. Andre. You are now listening to your number one source for clear, unfiltered conversations about your health and wellness. Join us every Tuesday for success stories, educational topics, and interviews with wellness experts from around the world. You can listen to this podcast on your computer, phone, or any other electronic device that streams podcasts, or download each episode and listen to it on the go. Let's get started with today's episode.
Welcome to another episode of the Healthy Reasonings podcast. We are the number one podcast for clear, unfiltered information about your health and wellness. And to continue in that vein, I think I'm going to take a cue from our guest today and start off our podcast by saying that the advice that, or the conversation that's being had today is not intended to serve as medical advice. If you have a medical condition that you're unsure about or a medical question, please seek advice from your own healthcare practitioner, or if you don't have one, find one that you trust and ask them the relevant questions and get professional healthcare from them. Our purpose here is to provide you with information. This information is not to be thought of as information directed to you, nor is it advice about your specific medical condition. And I got that out of the way. Folks, we are in for a treat. We're in for a treat today because we have a great man with us, a brave man with us. He's a father. He is, in this case, a friend. He's a business person. He is, I found out, a farmer. He's also somebody who takes care of animals. He is somebody who prepares for the winter in July or June. So Instagram tells you a lot of things about a person that you wouldn't know by being friends with them. Anyway, enough of that. Today, our host is none other than Ryan Sternagel, who is behind two amazing initiatives. One is the Going Integrative Plus webinar series and a series of live calls. It's actually a program that you can be a part of. Highly recommended. And two, he's a part of the anti-cancer revolution. And I don't know how much you guys have known about him before, but I'm going to guess that there are going to be people listening to and watching this podcast who already knew him before they knew me. So I'm going through the formalities of introducing him to the people who knew me but didn't know him. Ryan, welcome to the Healthy Reasonings podcast.
It's good to be here, Andre. I'm kind of a farmer right now. I just wiped out our whole summer crop, but you know.
Oh my goodness! What was that? What was that crop?
Just a bunch of different lettuces, really, nothing fancy, but yeah. We have a geodesic grow dome greenhouse, right? That you can grow year round in it, which is awesome for living at 7,400 feet in the mountains like we do. But it's got these vents on it that open when it gets too hot. And a couple of those vents were broken, and I knew I needed to fix them. But all of my free time, if you want to call it that, has gone into horse projects over the summer, and the greenhouse got neglected, and it got too hot in there, and it wiped out all of our beautiful lettuce. So it's okay. Well, we will prepare for winter in a couple months, like you said. Yeah.
That sounds like an amazing life. It's interesting to me how many people who are into health and wellness who see the need to grow their own food. That's a unique feature across the board, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Especially now, right? I mean, it's
Ryan,
always been a thing.
You're tiptoeing around it, right? By the way, guys, I want to remind you guys that we're on video, so you can see Ryan's expression. If you're not watching this, if you're only listening to this, I recommend highly that you switch to video and you can look into his eyes. Go ahead, Ryan.
But, yeah, I mean, it's always been a thing, knowing that the food you grow for yourself is going to be exponentially more nutrient dense, and so you get the living energy out of the lettuce that you go pick for the salad that you're going to eat immediately versus what's been sitting on the shelf or what's been sitting in a truck and then sitting on the shelf and all that stuff, right? And so it's always been in the back of our minds that we should be growing our food for the most vibrant, nutrient dense food. But now you've got the whole as long as you're taking good care of the soil and adding good minerals and all that stuff, right? But now you've got the appeal thing, which the wax that you eat is getting more and more questionable. And not that we're growing our own fruit, still got to work on that one. But but they're coming after the healthy people now with the modification of bacteria, right? And I've taken a step back from probiotic supplements because they're that's their new thing is engineering bacteria. And so that goes for probiotic supplements, that goes for the bacteria that gets used in crops, and it's a wild world out there. So it's just so anyway, that's you do what you can, right? That's not to say that you should avoid all food from the grocery store if you're not growing all of your own food, because I just wiped out all the lettuce. Back to buying lettuce from but then there's the intermediate step, right, of finding really getting to know all of your local food growers, right, and getting on CSAs, community supported agriculture, and having paying your local farmer a few $100 to get the weekly food boxes and all those things, right? So that's something that I've also been a lot better about in more recent years, is really just clicking around, going to the farmers markets, finding out who's growing what, and trying to get as much local organic stuff. And then there's the problem that this guy's local, but he's still using pesticides and that sort of thing. So I think I'd still rather buy organic lettuce from Whole Foods than not organic lettuce from the local guy. But finding out who's doing it the right way locally and buying from them is your next best thing.
Yeah. Guys, Ryan effortlessly just encapsulated episode 3 of our podcast. So one of the things I've noticed, Ryan, is the guests on our podcast. I mean, so I have really good friends, yourself included, and naturally birds of a feather flock together. And so it's not surprising that the way you feel about food in this case is similar to the way I feel and the way our healthy reasoners feel. But what is interesting is the way you express how you feel. And I find that across the board, we've not sat down and said, okay, Ryan, you're going to say this because I need it to sound this way. and yet you effortlessly, stream of consciousness, you just release a whole episode of what we spoke about. Just that would have been episode 1, 2, 3. Yeah, episode 3, without knowing. And that's typical of somebody who's a healthy reasoner. So congratulations, you have been officially inducted.
I love it. Growing your own herbs is a good place to start too, right? It's not quite as demanding as the whole full blown, all the vegetables and lettuce and that sort of thing. And the herbs are the only thing that survived me nuking everything else. So there you go.
Ironically. All right, Ryan. I think you have spoken so many times about how you ended up in the wellness space, so to speak. I learned from a recent interview we did with Mirabeth Gonzalez that one should never assume that it was crisis that pushed you into the wellness space, because even though I know a little bit of your story, and I know that you're most well known for how you responded to a personal crisis, I want to give you the floor to explain I mean, obviously, I'm going to ask you about what you're most known for, your story. But when did you start to enter what is now known as the world of healthy reasoning about wellness in general? Was it during the crisis we both know about, or was it before?
Yeah, before. And I know you said that you don't want this to be a conspiracy theory podcast, but it was actually through, I got into that type of research, right? Like researching and finding out about control structures, and it's more than just you're the lawmakers, and there's the puppet masters or whatever, all that stuff, right? And it was actually through learning about all of that then that brought me to, okay, there's fluoride in the water, and there's BPA in the plastics, and there's you don't want to be eating glyphosate food, and we're getting poisoned from a million different angles, and all these sorts of things. And that was what actually kind of kicked us off going down the health rabbit hole, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I were playing around with different diets, and let's be vegan for a while and check that out, and let's go on this diet or that diet, and started following a couple the I guess original online health influencers when that whole thing was was just starting to take off. People giving health advice online, and just watching, and through that we had been just watching all the health documentaries that we could find, and watched a bunch of and then through that watched a bunch of cancer documentaries, the original Gerson documentaries, and Brzezinski documentary, and all that stuff. And so we kind of had that under our belt when our son was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Yeah.
So that was. I've found that if I ask questions that seem obvious to me, I sometimes get answers that are the first time we're getting that answer is on this podcast. So I'm going to ask you a few questions that are probably simple, but that's the beauty of being the interviewer. But before we do that, I want to take a quick break just to do a quick promo, and then I'm going to get into the story that we both know. Actually, I don't know the details. I really need to hear it from you in more detail. So let's take a 10-second break, and we'll be right back.
In a world that moves too fast, it's easy to lose touch with what truly matters, your well-being. At Teshuva Wellness, we believe in a return to balance, to healing, to your best self. Our holistic approaches nurture not just your body, but also your soul. Whether you're seeking peace, energy, or a deeper connection, we're here to guide you every step of the way. Our medical experts specialize in holistic treatments for chronic diseases, ranging from autoimmune illnesses to cancer. Our treatments are safe, non-toxic, and effective. Because at Teshuva Wellness, your journey to wellness is our greatest commitment. Visit our website today at teshuvawellnessja.com or call 1-876-787-8197. That's 1-876-787-8197. Teshuva Wellness. Return to health. Return to your best self.
All right, we're back. Yeah, so first of all, your wife, her name is Teddy, correct?
Teddy for short, Theodora in full, but yeah.
All right, all right. There you go. I ask a question and I get an answer that I didn't expect. So, all right, so I'll be calling her. No, I probably shouldn't call her by her given name, should I?
Yeah, her mom always wanted to name her Teddy, but felt like she should have a full name, so it was Theodora. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I'll call her Teddy because I want to live very long and healthy. So I don't know how she might react to Theodora. Hey, Theodora, how are you? Anyway, so how long had you guys been married when you were met with this personal challenge? Tell me.
We were married in 2009, about 4 years. Yeah,
Hang
right.
on.
No, 5 years. So we were married in 2009, and Ryder was diagnosed in 2014. 4.5 years, I'd say. Yeah.
So hang on, let's back up. You were married in 2009. Which month? Because that's the year I got married.
October 24th.
Ah, I'm August. Okay, okay. We're all right. So I like this. I like this. So we're learning more and more about each other. Keep going, my friend. So you're married 5 years, and tell me, how did you first recognize that something was wrong?
Uh, yeah. So Ryder was our firstborn son. He was born in May of 2013, and this was coming up on his first birthday, maybe month and a half before his first birthday. Teddy noticed a lump in his back, like in his lower spine, like off to the side of his spine, and it wasn't huge, but when he was bent over in the right way, when she was nursing him, she could feel this lump there. And what's this lump doing there? And that we were just kind of weirded out by that for a little while, not very long, before we ended up taking him into the pediatrician that we had been seeing for him. And it actually was a more naturopathic type pediatrician, which we were already far enough down the health road to know that's what we wanted to be seeing. But this particular pediatrician was of no help, and told us to I don't know. So like we had the lump sticking out of his back, right? But then all these other things that we'd kind of been putting off to the side as, well, I guess kids, everybody grows up differently, and we're first time parents, and we don't really know what's normal and what's not. But he was, again, like 11 months old, coming up on his first birthday, and was not only not crawling, but could even kind of barely roll himself over. Um, couldn't really move much, right? He wasn't crawling. We could barely roll himself over. So there was that. There was we tried to introduce food, and that was just, he wasn't taking that at all. He had a really hard problem with even the softest of anything we tried to introduce. Um, he had also started falling off the growth chart, right? He was born in the, like, I forget what exactly, but well over the 90th percentile in both height and weight. And he was, steadily falling down on the percentiles on the growth chart, and all these things, right? And so now we're taking these things are adding up in our heads when we're now noticing this lump in his back. And so took him into the pediatrician, and they had no answers as to what the lump is. But you're just being paranoid, first time parents, and you need to get him into physical therapy to teach him how to crawl, and you need to get him into speech therapy to teach him how to eat. And
Wow. Okay.
So that,
All right.
I mean, there was like, Teddy freaked out, and she came home with all these different foods. They said you need to be giving him formulas, and all this stuff. And they were like, this is stupid. There's a lump sticking out of his back. No infant needs physical therapy to teach him how to crawl, and all this stuff. And so we went to just the local hospital for children from there, and got, we thought, whatever doctor we were talking to, he took an x-ray, and the x-ray showed that he was constipated, which was another thing, right? That was, I forgot, but that was, he had been super regular pooping for the first part of his life, and then all of a sudden he's having these constipation issues as well. So the x-ray, all they saw from the x-ray was that he was constipated, and they said, again, no answer for the lump in his back, but we don't see anything from the x-ray, and come back in 6 weeks if it's still there, if the lump's still there, right? And and that, I think that was on a Friday. on that Monday, we were calling back, demanding to see somebody else, and then we got in with a different doctor, and I don't know, that doctor and the nurse, that they were both, the same thing, trying to tell us we were being paranoid. And the nurse worked in the oncology ward, and all the kids in the oncology ward looked, sick, and your kid looks fine, and there's nothing to worry about. And
Wow.
anyway, we basically said we're not going anywhere until we get, some kind of imaging, an ultrasound or whatever. And we got the ultrasound, and that, sure enough, showed that there was some sort of mass in his stomach, and stomach / spine area. And then they scheduled for an MRI for as soon as they could. And the MRI, it was supposed to take a half hour. I think it took an hour and a quarter, hour and a half, something like that. And as the minutes were ticking by, we knew this was probably not a good thing that it was taking this long. And the classic phrase that we'll never forget, when the doctor and the nurse came back into the room, the doctor had tears in her eyes, and she said the lump you felt was just the tip of the iceberg, and your son has, and then we saw the MRI images, and it's like, he had a huge tumor that was bigger than his kidneys inside of and growing out of his spine, and a couple secondary tumors, and the secondary tumors were metastasized into his hip bones. And it turned out he had stage 4 cancer.
Wow. So I'm listening to the story, and I'm already, even though I know it has a happy ending, I'm just feeling absolute shock and disbelief. But I'm gonna put that aside for now to ask you the next question, which is, prior to this this period in your life, were you ever in medical school?
No.
So here's a question for you. And it's more of a philosophical question, but it's this. I suspect that you were quite trusting of the doctors that you went to, which is exactly why you went to them in the first place. How did you feel, the second time around, when you had to insist that you wanted to do an ultrasound?
Frustrated. Yeah, I mean, especially looking back on the whole thing, it's, it gets more ridiculous every time you tell the story and you hear it coming out of your mouth.
Oh yeah.
But it's a weird thing, right? Because it was the same doctors that were telling us nothing's wrong, at least the conventional guys, right? That at the drop of a hat, now they're saying you need to have them in chemo yesterday,
Exactly.
right? And it's like,
exactly.
You just told me nothing was wrong, and now that because we found out something was wrong, and thank God we didn't wait the 6 weeks that they told us to wait, because that it was a life-threatening situation. A lot of these kids so the cancer is called neuroblastoma. It's a cancer of the nervous system. Mostly a childhood cancer, so it can be anywhere from the brainstem down to the bottom of the spinal cord. So some of these kids with the cancer in their spine, if it doesn't get caught in time, then they can get paralyzed. They can break they can die from just from their back essentially being broken, right? Regardless of the cancer doing its thing. So yeah, no, it was. I can't say I was all that surprised, just from everything I knew about the conventional medical system up to that point. Just from our general research, it wasn't like my trust was broken, because I was already pretty disillusioned with learning about all the natural and alternative, and whatever you want to call this side of the holistic side of the fence, the suppression of all that. And so I already knew about all that. So I wasn't necessarily it wasn't like that moment broke my trust in the medical system or anything like that, but still, yeah, it's like just the, what the hell factor, and
Yeah.
you guys should at least be able to diagnose stuff a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was still a surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I may wax philosophical, it's something that I personally grieve about, because I think the natural sequel of that is what's happening right now, which is that you have almost two polar opposites within the wellness space. Because you have people who say, listen, everything conventional is bad. And then you'll equally have people who say everything, quote unquote, alternative is bad. And I think it happens because, at least in part, the trust that we've had in the medical fraternity, myself included, over the past couple of centuries has changed, because the medical fraternity has changed. You know what I mean? We're not going to go too deep down that rabbit hole, but I just wanted to hear from you the kind of emotional experience it was for you when you realized that you essentially, quote unquote, diagnosed your own son.
Yeah, and actually, Teddy, in doing the Dr. Google thing between the ultrasound and the MRI, had, or maybe it was even before the ultrasound. It could have just been the lump in his back, but either way, she had come to neuroblastoma before we ever heard those words out of a doctor's lips, which was wild. Yeah.
Yeah. And the trick is that it can be equally dangerous to have, everybody going to Dr. Google, because again, the opposite could have happened, which is it could have really been nothing. And because some people are so convinced that something is wrong, they ignore the conventional doctor's or any doctor's recommendation, and continue to seek health care for something that they don't need health care for. But that's another story. I'm just trying to show both sides of the coin. But what I recall of the story, though, Ryan, is that it actually got worse, didn't it?
Yeah. We in the okay, we were telling you nothing was wrong yesterday, and now we're telling you he needs to go to chemo before we even have a pathology report back or anything like that, right? We just need to start chemo right away, and we're like, you don't even know what it is yet, but you want to have him on chemo. That sounds kind of weird too. And so we went through with getting a biopsy. We went through with getting a port placed, because in our minds, even if we didn't know whether we were going to want to do chemo or not, even though we knew that, we would probably be forced to at some point, given the control system, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah,
or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's part of the story. We got a port placed because in our minds, like at least we were going to go use it for IV vitamin C or even IPT or whatever, because we had been researching all this stuff in the hours and days that led up to the diagnosis, and so we got the port placed, and then we actually said, okay, thank you for all of that. We're going to go home and get a second opinion, right? Because that seems, you always hear you should be getting a second opinion before you proceed with any medical treatment. And so we went home and we started calling around to everywhere, right? Different conventional hospitals, calling around to all the alternative cancer clinics, calling around to cancer coaches, just calling around everywhere, right? Trying to get our bearings about us. And that didn't last long, because I don't think it was that night, but I think the night after, Ryder was in bed with us, and we woke up in the middle of the night to him with crazy high fever, and all of a sudden he's puking all over the place, and we didn't know what was going on, and all we knew was our son had just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and now he's it looks like he's going to die right now, and so that middle of the night, 90 miles an hour on the freeway back to the same hospital we had just left. And that was a wild thing, just leaving that hospital, because we had a stream of doctors and nurses and social care workers and all this stuff trying to get us to stay. And we left, and so now we're back in the same place. And it turned out that they had, when they put the port in, he had gotten a bloodstream staph infection from it, so he was septic with staph. Thanks. And so now we're inpatient in the hospital with on all the antibiotics and all that stuff, and any hope of doing anything else, right? Going anywhere else was kind of out the window at that point. And we knew that it was a life-threatening situation. We were taking that seriously. And so we did go through with the first round of chemo that they were recommending, because by then they had the pathology report back and all that stuff. And we said, okay, well, at least we do need to shrink this tumor quickly. We're inpatient in the hospital, so we'll go forward with the first round of chemo. Did the first round of chemo, cleared up the infection, went back to the hospital a few days after we were released, because with the same thing, right? It was the same middle of the night, waking up with the the fever. The exact same thing happened. Turned out that the staph was actually living inside of the line, and so they hadn't replaced the line or whatever. And so the minute the antibiotics went away, the staph came back. So inpatient again. Got the line taken out. Got a port put in instead. I think I said port at first. It was actually a Hickman line that he had first, and the staph was living in the Hickman line. And then they took that out, put a port in. We went back, started doing more research, trying to figure out if we were going to go through with the next round of chemo. And somewhere along the lines there, we got a knock on the door from Child Protective Services saying that we heard you were refusing treatment, and basically we'll take your kid from you if you refuse treatment. And so it was kind of a weird situation, right? Because we had already consented to that first round of chemo. I think it was, I don't know, whenever we left the hospital in the first place, they must have called it in right away. And the government being the government, it still took them a few weeks to getting around and showing up at our door. But yeah, so then we were dealing with the stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and we're also in the Child Protective Services office answering all sorts of wild questions about stuff that CPS agents ask you, which was a bizarre experience in and of itself. But yeah, at that point, it was like, okay, we're clearly, we're not going to lose our child, so we'll go through with some more chemo. And then we were, just kept doing all of our research, right? Kept implementing things, doing supplements that we found out about just kind of randomly at first, or, the best we could figure out. And researching led us to, okay, well, IV vitamin C seems to be a thing. Let's try to find out where we can get some IV vitamin C. And that led us to Dr. Paul Anderson, who turned out to be, one of the world's most renowned naturopathic doctors that specializes in cancer. We didn't really know what a big deal he was at the time, but that was a really, really big turning point in our journey, stumbling onto him, because it was, I was researching the most far-flung alternative cancer blogs you could find, and that information was much more plentiful in 2014.
It's funny because we just had Mary Beth on, and I think, if memory serves me right, 2014 would have been the exact same year that we discussed in our interview. It seems like a lot changed shortly after that time. And we had this, and I think, in the interview, I think I linked it to the emergence or the real push behind Facebook was around that time as well. I mean, I feel like it could have been part of the contributing factor to that.
Yeah, I mean, it was
But
just, you could hop on Google and search
yeah,
alternative cancer terms and actually
yeah,
get like full-blown alternative cancer websites, right?
yeah,
And so I was researching everything, right? The all the wildest stuff, and
yeah,
I miss those days, of being, of being able to find those really good alternative cancer websites. They're nowhere to be found anymore when you search for them.
right.
But yeah, I mean, so I had all of this swirling around in my mind, and should we do this crazy sounding protocol? Should we do that crazy sounding protocol? It all seems reasonable when you're just, when you're reading the story behind it and the explanation and all that stuff. And then walking into Dr. Anderson's office, who is a professional. He's been doing this for years, and not all naturopathic doctors are like this, right? But he's a gem, and whatever crazy alternative thing that I ran past him, he had a well reasoned, eloquent, thought out answer for everything as to, yes, this, you're on the right track here,
Mm.
or no, don't waste your time with that, or whatever, right? And so yeah, that was really big in being able to refine what we're doing. And then also, since we were going through with chemo, um, being able to, take the things that were going to protect him from as much of the damage as we could, and all this stuff. And so, yeah, that was a couple months of having one foot in the conventional world and having the other foot in the holistic world, but being, guided in terms of, the best way to proceed down that path by someone who knew what they were talking about.
Hmm.
And we were so we'd go for chemo appointments, and in between being inpatient and all this stuff. And then I think we joked that we snuck out to Dr. Anderson's office, and we'd be doing IV vitamin C and DMSO and all this stuff. And so he was combining the IV vitamin C and DMSO in the same bag, because you can,
Mm.
especially for the neurological stuff, you can get the vitamin C a little deeper.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if anybody's ever done IV DMSO before, or what DMSO smells like, but it's got a very, very particular smell, right? I
So
still
he was.
remember being in the hospital, and Ryder just reeking of sulfur or whatever it is, and they asked, like, what's that smell? And we
It's
said
like,
it's frankincense, right?
oh yeah, garlic.
Um,
He's been eating a lot of
we're like,
garlic.
oh, that's what frankincense smells like, okay. And so I don't know, we did that thing for a couple months, and then um, Ryder just blew through all the expectations of what was supposed to happen at
Yeah.
what time, right? And so
Yeah.
it went from like, we don't want to do, we never didn't want to do chemo at all, right? But like, when that didn't become an option, even it went from that um, to how much is enough, when can we stop? And we were
Yeah.
getting all sorts of conflicting stories. And
Yeah.
at first they said it was going to be, the standard of care was 4 rounds of chemo, and we said, okay, what are you looking for in those 4 rounds? And
Hmm.
if we get there sooner, can we back off and see if that was enough? And at first they had agreed to it and said, okay, well, we'll scan after 2 rounds, even though we usually don't do that. And they scanned after 2 rounds, and we blew what they said they were looking for out of the water. And but no, we never said that, or they changed the story or whatever. And then we got to the 4 rounds, and we said, okay, now we're coming up on 4 rounds. That's going to be all he's supposed to have, right? And then and then the story changed again, and we never said it was going to be 4 rounds. It's going to be 8 rounds. We need to start talking about radiation and all this stuff. And even though Ryder was doing better and better, now they're talking about more and more. And at that point, we actually just decided to move states altogether. It was after a particularly nasty, heated, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
visit with the doctor, and we were driving home, and Teddy just looked at me and said, so should we just move to Utah? And I said yes, and that was the end of that conversation. And
So I'm gonna take a quick break here because I want to make sure that people have a chance to absorb what you just said. So we're gonna take a quick break, listen to the business that we must listen to, and then we're gonna listen to where we're heading now with this story because it's super cool. So 10-second break.
Healthy Reasoners. You asked and we listened. After enjoying today's episode, you can now send Dr. Andre your comments via email or WhatsApp. That's right, WhatsApp your comments or voice messages to us at 1-876-405-7831 or email us at healthyreasonings@gmail.com. Once again, that's 1-876-405-7831 or email us at healthyreasonings@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you.
And we're back. So now you're forced to move states. Which state were you in before?
Washington State.
Okay. Let me look at my map in my head here. That's a big deal.
Top left corner of America.
Yeah, so I know how to find Washington. That's northwest. Yeah, Utah is Midwest. Roughly. Am I right? What do you call it?
You would call it the mountain region, I guess. Little before you would get to what you would call the Midwest. Yeah.
Okay, so Midwest is like Chicago, that kind of a thing. Missouri, Oklahoma. I don't know. Anyway, so you're moving for
There's
argument's
a couple
sake.
states over.
Yeah, so I live in Jamaica. So you're moving at least 20 Jamaicas away, to say the least. And you're pretty much in a movie at this point because you are running from the law, so to speak, in an attempt to save your child's life. Tell me about that.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing, right? Is our story is not that some of the stories you hear where they declined all conventional treatment and went all natural and cured themselves or whatever. Those stories are certainly out there, and they're great stories. That's not our story. Our story is we did do conventional medicine, but we were also very well aware of the damages that come from conventional medicine, right? And and especially with, not especially with childhood cancer, but you look at the long-term statistics for childhood cancer survivors, and it's been a while since I looked at them, but it's some astronomical number, like 80+% of childhood cancer survivors will go on to face major secondary chronic illnesses later in life. And the vast majority of those secondary chronic illnesses are life-threatening, such as secondary cancers and all these things, right? And so, yeah, it was, yes, he's doing better, and we would like to see if that was enough chemo for him, right? And if we can take it the rest of the way with all the stuff on the holistic side of the fence, right? And so we moved to in search of a team that was willing to work with us. And there's no magic, it's not like Utah is some bastion of medical freedom that where any parent can do what they want. There's no perfect state like that, but we knew that it was the best that we could think of in terms of it is a natural health friendly state, right? There's a ton of supplement companies are located here, and lots of naturopathic doctors and that sort of thing. But so it's high on the natural health friendly scale, but then it's also high on the personal freedom, personal liberty scale, which is, it's funny. You go to like a lot of the states in the South are really high on the personal freedom, what you would think of for, typical personal freedom stuff, government staying out of your business. But then they're terrible for actual natural health stuff, right? And so Utah's like the one state that had both of those things going for it. We moved here not exactly knowing what to expect, but yeah, the team that we landed on was willing to. And actually, when we got here and started talking to the new team, they pulled up his records, his care chart, his care plan, and the plan had always been the 8 rounds of chemo. So I think they were just telling us whatever we needed to hear to get us to the next round. You know what I mean?
That one hit me hard. Oh my
goodness.
So
the standard of care for his diagnosis was 8 rounds of chemo. We were 4 at that point. And but they were willing to take a wait and see approach, right, and see if it's not like they were into all of the natural health stuff. They knew we were doing that, but they were willing to say, well, the standard of care is 8 rounds, but he's doing great after 4 rounds, and maybe that was enough chemo for him, right? And so they were willing to do that. And that was, he never had any conventional medicine after that. We did all the things that that you talk about, and we talk about on the holistic side of the fence. And we fast forward 10 years. So he was diagnosed right before his first birthday in May of 2014, and we just crossed his 11th birthday. And
oh my goodness,
May of 2024. So now we're 10 years out, and it's a good thing.
And I want the listeners and I can say viewers. Oh, this is nice. I want the viewers and listeners to understand that when Ryan says that Ryder is 10 years out, or he's now age 11, this is not 10 years out lying in bed. This is not 10 years out being pushed around in a wheelchair. This is 10 years out, if my memory serves me right, mountain biking at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, no, and that's the neat part is when we were initially getting that first diagnosis and all that stuff, and again, he could barely. So it explained a lot when we saw that tumor in his spine, that he couldn't crawl and all that stuff. And, they had initially told us that even if he survived the cancer, he'd probably never walk from all the nerve damage. And, the walking came pretty quick and all that stuff. And he still, he still did have some residual nerve damage for quite a while, and he grew up, not running like the other kids did, and all that sort of thing. And so we were just happy to have him alive. But then several years ago, he discovered skiing here in Park City, and he's been been obsessed with skiing ever since. And then more recently, he was bummed every time ski season ended. But that's the other thing you do here in Park City is mountain bike during the summers. And so we got him into mountain biking a couple of years ago. And so, now he's a incredibly gifted skier and now a mountain biker. And it's really, really cool to watch. It's every parent obviously likes watching their kids do stuff like that. But I would say it's a little extra special for us every time he, accomplishes something that he wants to accomplish on the skis and the mountain bike or whatever. It's pretty neat. And jiu-jitsu, for that matter.
Wow. It only gets better. All right, Ryan. So we have a tendency when we get together to talk forever. And I've been told that the average concentration span of our viewers and listeners, not our viewers and listeners, but the average concentration span for the viewer and listener on social media in general is nowhere near 47 minutes, which is where we're hitting right now. So first of all, I want to just say again how much I admire the stance that yourself and Teddy took, and your willingness to look beyond the obvious, to be curious, to search, to extend your vision beyond just what's been the norm. And also, one of the things that struck me about your story as well is that even as you explored, you didn't just grab at every single thing that you came across either. You took a reasoned approach. You sought advice from experts on whether these esoteric or quote unquote alternative things you're looking at were viable. And I think that is a very disciplined approach to take, and obviously it has paid off. And so I wanted to make sure that people got the right message from this. And you were also very open about the emotions that you felt during this journey versus the emotions you obviously feel now. There's a popular video on Instagram with Ryder reciting the entire first chapter of John. And I think, if memory serves me right, he knows more than one chapter, doesn't he?
Yeah, what he's got 1 through 11, 14, and 15 memorized.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's putting both of us to shame, I think. Easily.
I couldn't hold a candle to that.
All right,
Yeah,
man.
no, it was neat.
So here we go with the section that everybody is going to be looking forward to. I mean, apart from the miraculous and amazing story of courage and sheer determination you've exhibited, I want people to hear answers to some weird and wonderful questions, Ryan. And so I'm going to ask, the way this works is I'm going to ask you two weird and wonderful questions. And this is not intended to be anything personal or invasive, but it's just simply something that you wouldn't expect to be asked on a typical podcast about health and wellness, especially one that happens to be the #1 podcast for clear and unfiltered information about your health and wellness. So I want you to think of a question for me while I think of two questions for you. I already have one. First one is pretty easy. It's weird and wonderful, but it's simply this. What would you describe as your hobby? If somebody asks you, what do you do as a hobby, Ryan? What do you do?
That's
Too easy.
no, I just just I, I like to think that when I get done doing all the things that I'm trying to do in the world, I'll get back to having
Tom.
hobbies. Um, I could point to the run that I usually take on Saturday mornings. I will
Nice.
do. We live in the mountains, and it's kind of a whole winding series of dirt roads and stuff like that. And so I'll run for a couple hours
Nice.
on Saturday mornings. That's my one thing.
Nice.
Yeah, I used to like reading weird esoteric books and stuff like that, and that's also taken a backseat to
Yeah. Manual labor.
trying to do everything we're doing in the world, right? And helping people with all the programs that we're putting out and all that stuff. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
sorry I didn't have a better answer for you there.
Oh, that one was good. It was good. And so do you want me to go with my second question or do you want to ask me yours?
What's your hobby?
Oh, nice. All right. So my hobby is this is supposed to be a whole episode, but that's cool. Let's see if people are watching and listening, then they'll pick up on it. My hobby is I actually compose music, primarily as an act of worship because of my faith, but also I compose music for short films and hopefully one day for long films. So let's see where that goes. But that's my hobby. That's where I feel most relaxed, sitting behind a keyboard or the bass guitar that you can probably see in the background there. That's
Have
my thing.
have I told you I played drums in a rock band in high school and I had hair down to here?
Oh wow! All right. So here's the deal. When you get to Jamaica, we will have a drum set up for you. I'll have my keyboard, and I'll probably find somebody to play the bass guitar, and let's see where we land.
We'll jam out.
Yeah, the keyword. I hope you notice what I snuck in there. I'm always doing that to you, but I don't think you pick up on it immediately. Yeah, you notice I said when you get to Jamaica, not if. so, so we're looking for you and Teddy and Ryder and the other two. I don't know their names, but they're all welcome.
Channing and Rocky. Yeah, he's got
Channing.
got a little Channing's his little sister. Rocky's his little brother.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome, man. Awesome. Such a beautiful family. Yeah, second question for you. So I asked Mary Beth this one, so I'll just give you the same one. Let's see. Would you ever want to visit outer space?
Would I ever want to visit outer space?
Pause.
I wouldn't mind,
Nice.
there's, we could get, we could get into, some people would say you could travel there with your mind. Some people
Uh,
would say that's the only way to get there.
uh,
Yeah, I don't know where I land on all that stuff, but,
Spaceship man, would you jump into one of those what do you call it? SpaceX
I
excursions?
definitely I wouldn't be the first guy on one of them.
Yeah, so Marybeth landed on no. For me, it's also a no. But for you, it sounds like you'd be strapping up and getting that helmet on.
Uh, if it were a proven means of, yeah, I mean, if it became as common as flying an airplane
Yeah.
or something like that, then
Okay. Okay. That's fair.
why would you not want to?
Just not my thing. As I said to Marybeth, and I'm saying to you, it's the going there is fine. It's the getting back. And I always think about the Earth's atmosphere, and you watch movies like Apollo, whatever it was, and the astronauts are trying to get back to Earth, and it's always a little bit tricky. So I think for me, it's not the getting there; it's more the getting back. And interestingly, Mirabeth told me that we currently have some astronauts who are stuck up there, as a matter of fact, which I didn't know.
Yep. So they say. Whenever whenever it gets into stuff that is or isn't happening anywhere, you gotta, I don't know what to think.
Ryan
We'll
is
leave it
going
there.
there.
Yeah.
We will. We'll talk about that one when I see you in probably pretty soon. Now that I think about it, but we'll talk about that off the air. Yeah, Ryan. So there's so many messages that we could close out with. But if you had to speak to somebody who, God forbid, is either faced with a situation where they've just been diagnosed with cancer or a family member has been diagnosed with cancer, I mean, you've gone to the full on, what do you call it? Almost like a Bruce Willis Die Hard type response. But, this is 10 years, 11 years later. How would you advise, in two sentences, how would you encapsulate the best way to respond to that kind of a challenge today?
Yeah, I mean, don't let any one person tell you what to do, right? Realize that there's many paths to wellness. Your path, and that's coming from the conventional side and the holistic side,
Yeah.
right? Just on the holistic side, just because it worked, just because this one protocol or whatever worked for this person doesn't mean it's going to work for you. On the conventional side,
Nice.
we know the profit motive and all that
Nice.
stuff, and they're closed down to all the things that we know that do work or work for at least some people on the conventional side, or excuse me, on the holistic side.
Yeah.
Seek out expert guidance, right?
Nice.
There are holistic doctors that specialize in cancer, like the revered Dr. Williams here. You're just the naturopathic doctor down the street that might have helped you with leaky gut or something at some point. That's not the guy you want to be seeing. You want to be seeing the guys with decades of experience dealing with cancer.
Yeah.
But then also, you mentioned that we didn't just grasp out at everything and do everything we came across, which is true. But on the same, the flip side of that coin is, don't let yourself become the victim of paralysis by analysis, right?
Yeah.
And you do need to just you need to have that balance of seeking expert guidance and not just doing everything, but at the same time, most of this stuff is, I don't want to say it's not going to hurt, because you can, you can mess up if you go too far on the alternative stuff. But I mean, doing like, we always thought that, like, if we're doing 50 good things, right, and a couple of those things are, maybe weren't the best decisions or counteract each other or whatever, we're still having the net benefit of those 48 things being a good thing, right? So there's that. Don't overanalyze stuff. Do your best. Do the best with the information you have now. Implement, fine tune as you go. Take it one step at a time. This is going way beyond 2 sentences, but I also tried to be pretty methodical in, when I was listening to all the different podcasts and watching the documentaries and blah, 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 of like, whatever really jumped out at me. And you got to let your intuition kind of guide you in terms of, it is drinking from a fire hose and information overwhelm and all that stuff. But I mean, whatever really jumps out at you for whatever reason and perks your ears up, those are the things that, you should be tracking down and make a note of those things. Like I had, list apps in my phone and that sort of thing. And whenever I came across something, I'd jot it down in the list, and then I'd have some time reserved each night for following up on the things that I'd jotted down and figuring out if we did want to implement that, if it made sense to, then, okay, what do I need to order, or what do I need to do, or whatever. And, schedule, routines, make yourself schedules, routines, the consistency is key when it comes to these sorts of things. And, that's a big one right there is, Teddy and I were not inherently organized or, type A, get them done, get her done type people, but we knew we needed to be. And so, we had elaborate schedules on the fridge and calendars and all that stuff for making sure that we got out in nature a few times a week, and, all the stuff. Right. And so it's just, whatever you find out about that seems like a good thing to do, just make sure it actually happens, whatever you need to do that.
Yeah. I should have asked you these questions at the beginning. Those are pretty awesome. In fact, I'm going to go back and review them, because probably steal a couple of them for my own patients. Ryan Sternagel, a gentleman and a scholar, and somebody I can call a friend. It's been a real pleasure having you on the Healthy Reasonings podcast, which just happens to be your number one podcast for clear, unfiltered information. And you could hear Ryan being super unfiltered about his journey there. About your health and wellness, thank you so much, sir. Please say hi to Teddy, Ryder, Channing, and Rocky. And the animals.
We'll do it.
Yeah. See you soon, my friend. Thank you guys for listening to the Healthy Reasoning and viewing the Healthy Reasonings podcast. Reach out to Ryan if you need to. His information will be in the show notes, and we'll see you again in the next episode. Bless you all.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Healthy Reasonings podcast. Remember to subscribe to this podcast so you can be updated as soon as new episodes are ready. If you have a question, send us a voice memo on Spotify or type your questions out in the comments. For more information or to become a sponsor, please check the show notes for our contact information. See you soon.